Hi, I'm Pat Barrett here at Women's Radio 2, and the WR channel. And once again, I'm in conversation with Christine Baumgartner. And as you probably know, and if you haven't, we have a lot for you to catch up on. We are talking about relationships. So this is, of course, men and women's relationships with each other, both at home and at business, but also it's about all of our relationships and the relationship we have with ourselves. And I think today's subject is a lot about our relationship with ourselves. I mean, it does show up generating a certain kind of response from other people. And Christine and I have spent a lot of time having our own conversation about this, but it's about how you know things about yourself. How do you know what you like? How do you know what's good for you? How do you know? And so that's a very deep subject, but it's a very important subject, and it shows up in a lot of interesting ways. So I'm going to let Christine take the lead, and we'll see what we learned from this conversation today. And all I can say is it's so interesting. I'm going to have to remind Christine that we can't go on forever like we did before. So we'll have to keep it short, but we can do it again. We can get to a certain place and we can come back to it, because I think it's probably one of the most important questions that we can ask ourselves. So welcome, Christine.
Hi, Pat. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. And yes, I think this is a very rich, full subject that can keep our lives on a better track and keep us upright and feeling more capable and ultimately happier, right?
That's the point, right?
Being
We
more in
talk
touch.
about that a lot in our own discussions, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So how do we know what we know about ourselves? The question I was telling Pat, I've probably asked 5,000, maybe more women in my practice, in my life, how they knew when something was right or wrong for them. And it's been fascinating to hear the answer, because often women don't trust, don't listen, don't pay attention, don't acknowledge, don't even realize that we have this instinct and intuition inside us that was our factory installation. Everybody has it, to just know what's the best thing and the not best thing for us all the time. So the question I always ask is, at some point in your life, you knew something was the right thing to do. You knew it was the right clothes to buy, the right job to take, the right turn to make when you were driving somewhere. You just knew. And it turned out to be the right thing once you did it. And even sometimes you knew it was the right thing and you didn't do it, and it turned out it would have been the right thing to do. So I want you to think back. And how did you know it was the right thing? It's either a sensation in your body. You might hear a word in your head. You might have a specific part of your body that tingles or feels a different temperature, or you might have a thought. It might just be a fleeting thought. And I was telling Pat, I said, there's almost not a body part I've heard from a woman that one woman or another has a different place in their body. And I was saying, mine is my solar plexus. It is so solid when it's the right thing for me to do. And I listen all the time. I don't argue with it ever. And then conversely, I want you to think about when you knew something wasn't the right thing to do. And whether you did it or not, it turned out wasn't the right thing to do. And how did you know it wasn't the right thing? Often, most of the time, majority of the time, it's something different. It's a different thought, a different feeling, a different sensation. It might still even be in the same part of your body, but different feelings. It might be a different thought, but a different thought. So for me, the no is when the ocean starts rushing between my ears, as if I put two of those conch shells on my head, and it says, no, stop, you have to stop. You have to go in a different direction. I just know. And the thing that I've learned about this is, too often, because of our conditioning as women, especially, most especially when something isn't right, we argue with it. We'll say, oh, but does that make me a bad person if I don't do that? What will they think if I don't do that? How would I explain to somebody that, my stomach tells me don't do this? Most people would think I'm being silly. So then we go do it anyway. And it turns out not to be the right thing, even though we knew we shouldn't do it. On the other hand, there's things that we go, wow, that would be really cool, but it's a little scary because it's new, or would I be not very good at it? Or what would people think about me if I did that and I was really successful at it? And so we often just don't listen and don't pay attention and argue with ourselves. So even though we're getting tapped on the shoulder about this is a good thing or a bad thing, we argue with ourselves. We try to talk ourselves out of it both ways, good and bad. I've talked to people that have had passed up fabulous experiences. I've talked to people who had terrible things happen to them, and they just knew ahead of time that they should have done the opposite thing. So my goal is with this conversation today is to encourage you to pay more attention when you look back. What were the things that you just knew and how did you know it? And what were the things you knew not to do and how did you know it? And practice now. I said, go ask yourself, should I go do this or that? Just some benign thing now, and see, does it show up in that same part of your body? And then ask a bigger thing and a bigger thing and see, does it keep showing up in that part of your body? Because it's helpful to start with something that you already knew was true, whether you did it or not. You really saw evidence. And now you're going to keep confirming the evidence longer. And it's kind of a fun experiment because you'll be amazed at how right you're going to be. How many times you really can trust your instinct and your tuition. And I mentioned to Pat that I've discovered over the years, men generally don't argue with themselves about this like women do. I mean, I can ask them how they know, and they know right away how they know. They generally don't have a big, long conversation in their head about, yeah, I should do that, or no, I shouldn't. They just go, it said I should, it said I shouldn't, and I just went with it. So it's interesting how women often do this thing that feels really normal and natural to us and doesn't serve us very well. And I think sometimes we get a little annoyed that men, how do they just make these snap decisions? They don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I want to have a whole discussion about it. And it's because they know and they trust that they know. So having a discussion with a man about your relationship or a project, you can certainly do that. I want you to see that he already knows what he thinks is right. And if you're going to tell him something different, you need to have that kind of a relationship that he'll listen. But it needs to not be something that completely goes against him saying, no, that's not the right thing for me or the company, or yes, it is the right thing for me and the company. Because it's not a bad thing that they know this. It's just different from us. And we could get much better at it if we paid more attention to, yeah, this is really the right thing, or no, this is not the right thing. And I was telling Pat, I've had lots and lots of dates in my life because I was single between my marriages, and I'm single now that I'm a widow. And I've never had a bad date, not one, because I pay attention. If something says don't go, I don't go. I don't have to even explain to anybody because I know in my head. And then there's times when I think, oh, wow, is this really the right thing to do? But my body says yes, my little solar plexus, I go, okay, I'm going. And it's never turned out badly.
On that point, I remember one of the conversations that we had about dating and not giving up. Do you remember that discussion? And I think that I've noticed, and you can tell me because you talk to so many more people about dating, but that women often are afraid to go on dates, and they'll give lots of different reasons for it. Oh, well, I don't know that person. I don't know how it'll turn out, etc. And I think a lot of that is because they don't trust their knowing place.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, that is 100% important point, Pat. I teach all my female clients, you'll know. Let's do this exercise. You've known in the past. if you practice doing your little knowing things as you're going along, you will never, ever, ever. That's not true. I can't say 100%. I mean, something could happen. Who knows? A car could crash into the restaurant. But generally, if you trust your gut, it will tell you. And, there are times when terrible things happen to people and they didn't know. They didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know.
They probably wondered why they didn't know, but sometimes
Sometimes
it's
you
not
aren't going
meant
to
for us
know.
to know ahead.
Right. There are times when there's divine intervention or whatever in the heck it is. I'll grant that.
Mhm.
But in this particular little microcosm that we're talking about right now, I will tell you way more times than not, trust that you'll know and go do it. And the more you trust, the better your self-confidence will be. The more you'll know that you know before you go do stuff. The more you will approach things with a more solid personal style, a more, I know what I'm doing, I know who I am. Because then when you look at that, then you look at the littler things of, well, what else could I do that would make me happy? And I'll trust that. What isn't making me feel good? What's the part of my body that doesn't like when I go do that? Well, what would I do differently? What feels better when I say, oh, I'd like to do that? Is that my knowing part that says that would be a good thing? So it's, if you start out with these bigger things, first you start out with little things, and then you look at the big things, and then you go more to every day, this or that. Should I do this or that? Should I go to this restaurant or that restaurant? Yes.
Well, I was just thinking when I started making that shift, and we talked about when that happened, I had gone away to school and never trusted myself to make decisions for myself. And just something finally guided me and said, I'm going to learn to make my own decisions. And one of the things I did, because I didn't have a wonderful person like you in my life at that time, is that I would take drives and I would get to an intersection, and I wasn't afraid of getting lost. That's good. And I would say, which way do I feel like I ought to go? And I would listen to that, and then I would do that. And it came out that it was absolutely right for some reason or another, the choice that I made. And that's a little thing. Other people choose other things, but I think that if you do start out with small things, it's a great way to begin to learn, because it's an invaluable asset to know that you know what it is that really suits you, that is really perfect for you, that will make you happy. And after all, I think that the goal of life is to be happy. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we do this, right? So we're happy in ourselves, and then we're happy in our relationships. And if we can do those things, maybe we can make the world a lot better place to be in. But there's so much more to talk about, Christine, in this area. So I don't want us to give up this, but I do think that we might hold on to our enthusiasm to the next time. And I want to invite everyone, if you've got a special question for Christine about this, she counsels people on this all the time, and helps people come to a place where they are making much better decisions for themselves. So I want to thank you, and then encourage everybody to come back the next time, because I think we're going to get deeper and deeper. It's going to get more and more fun. So thank you, Christine.
And I loved your story about, because you never know if your voice or your feeling says turn this way, that it's the right way. You might stumble on a fun adventure. The other thing I've never questioned is when I start to leave my house, I never ask if I have everything, but every once in a while I'll hear, go back. And I often have, oh, there is one more thing. But sometimes there's not one more thing, but I'm driving and I miss an accident. It's happened
Ah,
so many. So whenever my
that's
head
true.
says, because I leave a lot and very seldom do what that just happened, that it says go back, but I never stop. If it says go back, I walk in the house, I'll walk around. Maybe I do. Oh, I forgot something, or I would like to take something. And it's always, that is 100% for me, like your attorney. So I encourage people to experiment, to just play.
Yes.
Don't make it this big serious thing. Just play and then use it when it's something serious, right?
Yes. So also in the meantime, when you do play and you want to share your experiences, please write us. And our email still is womensradio@gmail.com. I encourage you to send us your notes. I think this is going to get to be more and more fun.
I think so too. It's always fun talking to you, Pat.
It's always fun being with you and our wonderful, wonderful audience. So thank you again, and we'll see you again real soon.
Bye for now.